Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys to give you another little update here on Hurricane Idalia. Hurricane Idalia, the intermediate advisory has come out. Winds are now up to about 105 miles an hour, still keeping it in the Category 2 status, but some additional intensification is looking likely overnight tonight, possibly making it up to about a Category 3 hurricane as we go into the late night hours. So we're just going to take kind of a quick look over at the radar and, we'll take a look at some of those observations. We'll see how that buoy's doing out there, albeit it's getting dark out there, so we probably won't be seeing much, at least in the way of video from it, but we could be seeing at least some decent observations as we go into the overnight tonight. So without any further ado, we're just going to take a look at the radar. No need to really show the satellite at this point. I mean, it's starting to look more and more like a hurricane. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the screen here. We'll just take kind of a quick look over at the radar image. For those of you who have been watching some of the weather chats we've been doing over the past week or so, you've heard me explain what the velocity radar image is, and that's what you see there on the right. The velocity is what we use in meteorology to look for winds and even rotation within a thunderstorm. And it also helps out during hurricanes to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what the winds are. So the velocity radar imagery works like this. It's kind of simple. Green are winds going towards the radar site, which in this case is Tampa, and reds are winds going away from the radar site. Where we see brighter values of those, those are higher wind values. And in this case, the velocity radar imagery out of Tampa is picking up at least a little bit above ground level here. Now, mind you, we're pretty far out on the radar site, so it's not looking at, very low at the surface. It's actually probably looking about a couple thousand feet above. And we're also over the open waters, but some of the values that we're seeing here, about 102 miles an hour, 107 miles an hour. So again, if we kind of filter that down a little bit, keep in mind that, this is a little higher up in the thunderstorm where the winds are probably going to be a little bit higher. That does kind of put it right around the 105 mile an hour range, which is what is estimated right now with Idalia's wind speeds there. So again, kind of a cool image there. And if we were to go ahead and loop that radar image, you can kind of see here, and these are really fun to watch, again, especially as they pass by the radar site. You'll see those red and greens kind of moving just based on, the overall, position with the radar. We know that this is we know this is a hurricane. We know it's got some pretty strong winds there. But let's take a look. We'll flip off the velocity imagery for now, and let's take a look at the radar image, the one you guys are all familiar with. This is detecting precipitation, and hey, wouldn't you know, we can see the eye wall here on Hurricane Idalia. Now, Hurricane Idalia, on a side note here, should keep in mind that we're probably not seeing very much on the western edge of that. Now, historically, the eastern side of these hurricanes are normally the stronger side, but also keep in mind here that we're pretty far out. Literally, it's actually kind of interesting that the eye is pretty much right on the boundary of the radar. So we're not really seeing too much on the western half in terms of precipitation, and part of that is just because the radar beam is pretty far out at that point. But you notice this little ring here. Here's the eye right there of Idalia. All right, see it pretty clearly. See this little ring right here? That's the eye wall. That's where the strongest winds are going to be located. And I'll tell you right now, the hurricane force winds of Idalia, at least at the last update here, we'll go ahead and flip on the wind field here. Now, again, mind you, this is the wind field, and you can see this was as of about 20 minutes or so ago. So obviously, Idalia is now a little bit further up towards the north. But if we were to kind of just imagine that the eye right here goes back down to the center, again, obviously, Idalia is moving. The wind field is not updated with it. That's done at the advisories. But the hurricane force winds, and those are just winds that are 74 miles an hour or greater, okay? So we see that those winds really do not extend that far out from the center. As a matter of fact, they only extend about 15 miles out from the center, according to this. 15 miles. We got 100-mile-an-hour winds, folks, and right there is the boundary of hurricane force winds, which is 74 miles an hour. So where is that 115-mile-an-hour winds? Well, it's right there, probably right here in this part of the eye wall. This is where the strongest winds of any tropical system or any hurricane are, is right around here. This is the eye wall. So we talk about that this hurricane has 105-mile-an-hour winds. Obviously, not the entire thing. It's just the strongest portion. And again, it just has to be the maximum wind estimated within that storm to give it its category. So most places only seeing tropical storm force winds. Again, these are the low. This is the low end tropical storm force winds. This is the moderate tropical storm force winds, and then this is the hurricane force winds. So you can see it there. Very condensed, and typically we see hurricanes intensifying. We do kind of sometimes see, the wind field kind of, well, at least the stronger winds kind of more or less become a little bit more compacted, and there's some reasons for that. But it doesn't mean that it's a weakening or it's a weaker hurricane. It just sometimes these systems become a little compact when they kind of undergo intensification. So that is a look right now at what is up with Idalia's wind. So again, we have these outer bands here, which sometimes these outer bands, especially with stronger hurricanes, what's really interesting about these outer bands sometimes is there's a lot of wind shear going on, and sometimes we actually do see tornadoes coming out of sometimes these outer bands. It does not appear to be right now if there's any active tornado warnings, or let's see here, if we flip back on the velocity really quickly, maybe we can see if any of these little guys are rotating here, and this time it does not appear to be that way, as most of it is obviously over the water. But sometimes that is something to kind of keep an eye on, especially when they get a little bit closer to land. So what's Idalia going to be doing here as we go through the evening? Well, Idalia, the center of Idalia is going to be kind of be staying on this northerly track before it begins to turn to the north and to the east here. So again, right now as we go through the rest of the evening, we're expecting that Idalia is mainly going to kind of run parallel here a little bit to the West Florida coast. So again, the places like Bradenton and Sarasota, Northport are going to be getting brushed here by the outer bands of Hurricane Idalia, but they're likely not going to be seeing hurricane conditions. That's why they're only have tropical storm warnings, as they're just going to be seeing winds less than 73 miles an hour, even gusting less than that at times as we go through the next few hours. But then Idalia is going to begin to make a turn to the north and to the east here, staying over water as long as it can. Just kind of a coincidence that it happens to be picking a path that's going to keep it over water as long as possible before it makes a landfall very sometime early tomorrow morning, maybe right around sunrise, possibly even a little bit sooner or maybe a little bit later. We'll just have to see exactly where it ends up. But as it goes through the rest of the evening, could very well intensify a little bit more. Like I said, expected still to become a Category 3 hurricane, then making a landfall sometime tomorrow morning, pretty much right here south of the Perry area. So again, hurricane warnings are in red here. But keep in mind that not everyone's going to be seeing those 115-mile-an-hour winds, even within the hurricane warning. So places like Tampa will probably just be seeing hurricane force wind gusts barely at times as we go through maybe the evening and overnight tonight, and then as it begins to turn a little bit more, Idalia will then begin to weaken as it tracks its way into southern Georgia, eventually just weakening down to a tropical storm by the time it gets over to Charleston, South Carolina, sometime tomorrow night. But regardless, when these hurricanes move inland, it begins to transition from more of a wind event to more of a heavy, heavy rainfall type of situation there. And again, severe weather also kind of tags along with that. But still, the hurricane force winds could go a little bit inland here, just based on the overall track. And you can see this is somewhat kind of a narrow strip of land here. So if Idalia does at some point decide that it wants to kind of re-emerge back out into the open waters, may not weaken quite as much depending upon how long it stays over land. So earlier on, we were taking a look at a buoy that is 42036. This is an old picture. Unfortunately, Idalia is mainly going to be passing by this thing, even though it'll be very close to a direct hit. It'll be at night, so we probably won't see much in the way of video from this, as it's going to be dark. But we do see that as of about a half an hour ago. Now, mind you, this is at Eastern time. Some of you watching at Central time. So again, this would be about 6:50 p.m. Central time when these observations were taken. 38-mile-an-hour wind gusts, about 7.5-foot waves, and this will likely increase as we go into the overnight. As if we were to flip on really quickly the track here of Idalia, you're going to be seeing that buoy is going to be getting very close about as close as possible, at least right now, to getting a direct hit from Idalia when it passes by sometime late tonight, probably around 2 a.m. or so. And then we'll be seeing Idalia making its way inland. So certainly seeing some video out here and there from obviously some spotters that are around the area. And we'll show you something really cool here with one of those. Wow, that is
I'm just going to head over that way right now and see if I can keep service or not.
So really hasn't started there yet. And we can see a lot of that rain is actually off the coast. But one thing I noticed with one of these spotters out here is they have their elevation tracked. And look at how low the elevation is. And again, this is how it is across all the Gulf Coast. I mean, only 8 feet above sea level. So when we talk about storm surge, especially in the Gulf Coast, it's a big deal because, you know, the elevation across Florida, Mississippi, you know, all those, you know, especially the closer before you get, the elevation is not very high. So it doesn't take much to push that water inland and obviously create a little bit of a slight setup. So that is something why we have those you know, storm surges of about 6 to 11, 7 to 11. No, what would they have there? They had the last update here. Guess before I get it wrong, might as well just show you all the map here of the storm surge. 10 to 15 foot storm surge. Basically, right where this is going to be making landfall later on. So again, storm surge is the wind pushing basically the ocean a little bit inland, and you know, depending upon where you are, that does lead to flooding, sometimes in a matter of feet deep there. And so again, that's what we talk about when we talk about storm surge. Places like Gainesville are not going to be seeing storm surge. They are way too far inland for that. But you know, it's mainly a thing that just kind of affects, you know, the coastal areas up to a few miles and sometimes a little bit more or less depending on the elevation setup there. But again, 10 to 15 foot storm surge. Well, you do the math. That's going to do, you know, a pretty good number on some of the coastal areas, especially. And tack on, you know, the 115-mile-an-hour winds that could be possible right around the center of Idalia. That certainly will lead to probably a little bit in the way of some beach erosion as well as maybe some damage here and there. But it's Florida, folks. Florida, if you're going to have a hurricane hit a state, Florida is probably the state that is able to cope with it the best because it's Florida. I mean, they get hurricanes about every year. So Florida is just one of those states, and it's still there. Florida's still there. So this is not going to be, you know, this is obviously will be a strong hurricane at landfall, but you know, there's always the probability of a few records being set here and there. Just, you know, how often do you get a Category 3 hurricane making landfall at one specific point? But you know, Florida has withstood even stronger hurricanes like Ian last year, and you know, obviously the big one for my generation was Hurricane Andrew that went through in '92. That hit just north of Miami, I believe. No, just south of Miami. But it did a pretty good number on southern Florida. And there have been others: Gene, Charlie, Francis, Ivan, which was more of Pensacola area, and just to name a few off the top of my head there. So Florida will withstand this one as they always do. And again, but it's still going to be a very interesting hurricane nonetheless. Very strong. Well, Category 3 hurricane expected at landfall. And again, we'll kind of keep an eye as we go through the rest of the evening. We'll probably get do more updates tomorrow morning as Idalia does begin to work her way into land and eventually makes a landfall. Like I said, we'll have some pretty decent video. My expectation is we'll have some very good video. We'll have pretty cool observations from that buoy out there, and naturally we'll be getting reports as Idalia works its way inland tomorrow morning. So that is a quick little update on Hurricane Idalia. Like I said, we'll probably do one more update this evening, and then we'll be back tomorrow morning doing many more updates. So with that in mind, everyone, I hope you all enjoyed these little updates here. Hey, if at any time you guys have any questions, even if it's after the video, you can always ask them in the comments, and I'll get to them at the next video too. So again, if you got any weather questions, feel free to ask them. Main thing we're talking about tonight, obviously, is Idalia, and that's probably what we're mainly going to be talking about tomorrow is Idalia. So if you got any tropical questions, feel free to ask them. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Look forward to seeing you back here at the next one, and hope you all have a good rest of your evening.